Story 1. The Shoulder Walker's Grip. In the bitter winter of 1998, Interstate 70 sliced through Kansas like a blade, its endless fields of snow-dusted wheat stretching under a sky heavy with secrets. Jack Ramsey, a 42-year-old trucker from Topeka, was a fixture on this lonely highway, his Kenworth rig hauling frozen beef from Denver to St. Louis. A man of few words, Jack's weathered face bore lines carved by years of squinting into sunsets, his CB radio crackling with country ballads and the banter of fellow drivers. He'd seen his share of road oddities, deer frozen in headlights, hitchhikers with hollow stares, but nothing prepared him for the night he encountered the Shoulder Walker, a figure that emerged from the blizzard shadows, its grip a cold promise of terrors that would stalk him beyond the mile markers, forever binding him to I-70's haunted asphalt. Jack had been driving for 12 grueling hours that February night, the sleet spitting against his windshield like needles, glazing the glass with a thin sheen of ice. His thermos of black coffee was nearly drained, his eyes burning from the strain of peering through the storm, the wiper's rhythmic slap, his only companion. Around 2 a.m., he passed a shuttered gas station near Salina, its neon sign flickering like a dying heartbeat, casting eerie shadows across the snow. The CB was unusually quiet, the other truckers either bunked down or out of range, leaving Jack alone with the hiss of static and the low growl of his engine. He was planning to pull into the next rest stop, maybe catch a few hours sleep, when he saw her, a woman walking along the shoulder, her silhouette stark against the frosted grass, moving through the blizzard as if untouched by its fury. She wore a long, pale coat, its hem dragging in the slush, her head bowed, her steps slow but relentless, like a metronome ticking through the storm. Jack's brow furrowed, his calloused hands tightening on the wheel. No one walked these desolate stretches at this hour, especially not in a Kansas blizzard, and the nearest town was 30 miles back. His first thought was a wreck. Maybe a car had spun out, leaving her stranded. He keyed the CB, hoping to raise another driver for backup, but got only a sharp burst of static that made him wince. Against the gnawing unease in his gut, he eased his rig onto the shoulder, the tires crunching gravel, the engine idling with a deep rumble. Leaning out his window, the cold biting his face, he called, "Ma'am, you okay?" His voice was swallowed by the wind, and she didn't pause, her steps unbroken, her form flickering in the sleet like a bad signal. Jack's instincts screamed to drive on. 20 years on the road had taught him to trust that not in his stomach, but pity won out. He'd heard too many stories of stranded travelers freezing to death, their bodies found curled in ditches come spring. Grabbing his heavy Maglite flashlight and zipping his flannel jacket, he stepped out, his boots sinking into the wet earth. The storm's howl louder now, carrying a faint, unnatural whine. The woman was about 20 yards ahead, her coat tattered, its fabric catching the wind like a sail. Jack's flashlight beam cut through the sleet, illuminating her path, but the light seemed to dim as it neared her, as if she absorbed it. "Hey lady, you need help?" he shouted, his voice cracking in the cold. She stopped, her head tilting slightly, as if hearing something beyond the storm. Jack's heart thudded, his breath fogging in the frigid air, his fingers tightening around the flashlight's grip. Then, slowly, she turned, and Jack's beam caught her face, or what passed for one. Her eyes were sunken pits, black as the void between stars, her mouth a tight, lipless seam, her skin gray and taut, like parchment stretched over bone. She raised a hand, her fingers impossibly long, their tips blackened as if frostbitten, beckoning him closer. A voice, low and rasping, slithered through the wind. "Come walk with me." Jack's legs locked, his flashlight trembling, its beam wavering over her form. Before he could scream, she lunged, her movement a blur, her hand clamping around his ankle with a strength that felt like steel. Jack fell hard, the air knocked from his lungs, his flashlight skittering across the pavement, its beam spinning wildly. She began to drag him along the shoulder, her steps never faltering, her grip unyielding, the sleet stinging his face as he clawed at the frozen ground. Jack roared, kicking with his free leg. his boot connecting with her jaw, or where a jaw should have been. It was like striking concrete, the impact jarring his knee. But her grip loosened, her fingers slipping like ice melting. He scrambled back, crawling toward the road, his breath ragged, his ankle throbbing as if burned. She stood motionless, her head cocked at an unnatural angle, that lipless smile unwavering, her eyes boring into him. The whine in the air grew louder, a sound that wasn't wind but something alive, pulsing. Then, as the distant glow of another truck's headlights crested the hill, she shuffled into the darkness, her form dissolving into the blizzard, leaving only the echo of her voice. "Walk with me." Jack stumbled to his rig, his hand shaking so badly he fumbled the door and floored it to the Blue Moon truck stop, a neon-lit haven 40 miles east, its lot packed with rigs huddling against the storm. Inside the diner, the warmth did little to thaw the chill in Jack's bones. He sat at the counter, clutching a mug of coffee, his ankle swollen under his boot, and told his story to a group of drivers, their faces a mix of skepticism and unease. An older trucker, Gus, a grizzled man with a tobacco-stained beard, nodded grimly, his eyes distant. "You met a shoulder walker," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. "They're out there, always on the white line, going somewhere they can't rest. Seen one myself in '85, near Lincoln, Nebraska. Same eyes, same voice. You're lucky she let you go." Gus spoke of trucker lore, figures that walked the shoulders of I-70, I-80, I-40, their eyes empty, their hands reaching for the living. Some called them ghosts of travelers who died on the road, frozen or wrecked. Others whispered of older things, spirits tied to the land's forgotten trails, stirred by the highways that cut through their paths. Jack's encounter wasn't the last. Over the next months, he heard whispers on the CB, other drivers seeing a woman in a pale coat, her steps unbroken by storms, her voice calling them to follow. A rookie driver, Tommy, claimed she'd appeared in his passenger seat, her eyes reflecting his own terrified face, vanishing only when he swerved into a ditch. Jack's ankle never healed right, the skin marked with faint, finger-shaped bruises that ached in the cold. He quit driving in 1999, settling into a job at a Topeka warehouse, but the road's pull lingered. He'd wake on stormy nights to a rasping voice outside his window, the words clear, "Come walk with me." In 2005, a trucker found a tattered coat stuffed into a ditch near Salina, its fabric brittle, its hem stained with something darker than mud. Locals whispered of a woman who'd vanished in the 1950s, her car found empty on I-70, her fate a mystery. Jack kept a light on at night, the Kansas highways stretching in his dreams, their shoulders alive with figures that walked, their hands reaching, their voices a call no driver could ignore. I-70's feels like quiet under the sun, their wheat swaying in the breeze. But at night, the blizzard hides secrets, and the shoulder walkers roam, their steps a quiet promise of a journey no one returns from. Jack's story spread among truckers, a warning whispered at diners and fuel pumps, a reminder that the road is never truly empty, and some passengers you don't choose, they choose you. Story 2. The Ghost Train of Raton Pass. Raton Pass, a treacherous ribbon of asphalt straddling the Colorado-New Mexico border, was a gauntlet of steep grades and hairpin turns in November 2003. Its 7,800-foot elevation, a test of nerve for even the hardiest truckers. Maria Delgado, a 38-year-old driver from Albuquerque, was no stranger to its challenges, her Freightliner rig hauling produce from Denver to Tucson twice monthly. A single mother with a sharp tongue and a rosary dangling from her rearview mirror, Maria had weathered blizzards, mechanical failures, and border bandits, her faith a quiet anchor in the chaos of the road. Raised in a barrio where stories of La Llorona kept kids indoors after dark, she respected the unseen but never feared it, until the night she encountered the ghost train, a spectral locomotive that roared through the fog-choked pass, its whistle a scream that carried a century's worth of tragedy, its shadows binding her to Raton's haunted tracks in a way she'd never escape. The night was late November, the air thin and biting, the star swallowed by a dense fog that clung to the Sangre de Cristo Mountains like a shroud, transforming the pass into a labyrinth of mist and shadow. Maria was descending the southern slope, her rig groaning under a load of apples, the brakes hissing as she navigated the curves, her headlights barely piercing the fog's milky veil. The CB crackled with nervous chatter, drivers warning of black ice, others cursing the visibility. But Maria stayed focused, her brown eyes scanning the road, her calloused hands steady on the wheel, her rosary swaying like a pendulum. She just passed the old railroad tunnel, a gaping maw carved into the granite, its entrance choked with scrub pines and graffiti, when her headlights flickered and a sound cut through the fog. A low, mournful whistle, like a train's but warped, its pitch rising to a wail that vibrated in her chest, setting her teeth on edge. Maria's radio cut to static, the CB falling silent, and her dashboard lights dimmed, the gauges twitching as if possessed. Her rig's engine stuttered, a rare betrayal from a machine she treated like family, and the fog thickened, curling around the truck like a living thing, its tendrils brushing the windows. Ahead, the mist parted, revealing a train crossing the tracks that parallel the highway, its cars rusted and ancient, their windows glowing with a sickly yellow light that pulsed like a dying heart. It moved impossibly fast, no locomotive in sight, its wheels sparking against the rails, throwing embers that danced in the fog. Maria slammed her brakes, her rig fishtailing on the slick asphalt, her heart pounding as the train barreled toward the highway, its whistle now a scream that drowned out her own, a sound that wasn't just heard but felt, like nails on bone. She braced for impact, her hands clutching the wheel, her rosary tangling in her fingers, the cross digging into her palm. But the train passed through her truck, the cab plunging into an Arctic cold, her breath fogging as shadows flickered inside. Figures in old-fashioned clothes, their faces pale, their eyes hollow, fixed on her with a silent, desperate plea. A voice, faint but clear, slithered through the static. "Get off the pass." Maria's skin prickled, her cross heavy against her chest, and she floored the accelerator, her rig lurching forward, the train's glow fading in her mirrors, though the fog seemed to chase her, its tendrils clawing at the windows. The whistle echoed, now joined by a low rumble, like cars rattling on tracks, and Maria's mirrors caught glimpses of yellow light, flickering like a bad dream. She didn't stop until she reached the Trinidad truck stop in Colorado, 50 miles north, its neon sign a beacon in the mist, its lot packed with rigs huddled against the night like cattle before a storm. Inside the diner, the warmth of coffee and sizzling bacon couldn't thaw the chill in her bones. She sat at the counter, her hands trembling, and shared her story with Carla, a wiry waitress with a cross necklace and eyes that had seen too much. Carla paled, crossing herself, her voice hushed. "That's the ghost train," she said. "Wrecked in 1899, killed 30 souls, miners, families, a conductor named Elias Carter who tried to save them. It runs when the fog's thick, looking for the living to join its cars." Maria learned the tunnel had been a death trap since the railroad's birth, its tracks stained with blood from derailments, suicides, and vanishings that locals whispered were no accident. The 1899 wreck was the worst, a freight train carrying miners and their families, derailed by a landslide, its cars plunging into a ravine, the screams drowned by the pass's winds. Carla showed Maria a faded photo from the diner's wall, a grainy image of the wreck, its twisted cars eerily similar to what she'd seen. Other truckers at the counter nodded, their faces grim, sharing their own tales. Hank, a grizzled Vietnam vet with a scarred cheek, spoke of a night in '92 when he'd seen the train, its windows filled with faces, when a child who mouthed his name, her eyes black as coal. A rookie driver, Javier, admitted to hearing a whistle in 2001, followed by a handprint on his windshield, too large to be human, its fingers webbed with frost. Maria drove back to Albuquerque the next day, her rosary now a lifeline, her dreams haunted by the whistle's scream and the faces in the windows, men in miners' caps, women in bonnets, a child clutching a rag doll, all staring with eyes that knew her name. She avoided Raton Pass at night, taking longer routes through Las Vegas, New Mexico. But the road's pull lingered, a tug she felt in her bones. She started noticing oddities, her rig's odometer ticking backward, her coffee thermos emptying itself, her mirrors fogging with no heat, the glass cold to the touch. At home, her daughter, Sophia, 14, drew a picture of a train with glowing windows, claiming she'd dreamed it after Maria's trip. The details too precise. Rusted cars, no engine, a conductor waving from the fog. Maria burned the drawing, her hands shaking, and called her mother, a curandera who'd taught her about spirits. Donna Elena performed a cleansing, burning copal and chanting, but warned, some things latch on, Mija. You saw their pain, and now they know you. In 2007, a hiker found a rusted pocket watch near the tunnel, its hands frozen at midnight, engraved with Elias Carter, 1899. A local historian, Dr. Ruiz, shared records of other sightings, truckers in the 70s seeing the train, a bus driver in 85 who swerved to avoid it, crashing into a ditch, his passengers unharmed but shaken, claiming they'd seen faces in the fog. Maria's rig felt heavier after that night, its engine sluggish, as if carrying unseen weight. Her mirrors caught glimpses of fog even under clear skies, and she'd wake to a whistle, the voice clear. Get off the pass. In 2009, she visited the tunnel with Javier, now a friend, leaving an offering of tobacco and a prayer, hoping to appease the spirits. As they left, the air grew cold, and a single ember sparked in the tunnel's mouth, winking like an eye. Maria kept driving, her faith tested but unbroken. But Raton Pass's granite walls hide secrets older than the highways. Their tracks a path for ghosts who never rest. Their whistle a call to those who dare the fog after dark. Story 3. The Prom Girl of I-65. Interstate 65 through Alabama in June 1985 was a humid, pine-lined artery, its shoulders swallowed by darkness under a moonless sky, the kind of road where the night pressed close, its whispers weaving through the trees. Carl Hensley, a 50-year-old trucker from Birmingham, hauled steel coils from Mobile to Nashville, his Peterbilt rig a sanctuary of cigarette smoke, coffee stains, and Hank Williams cassettes. A gruff man with a soft spot for his grandkids, Carl had seen the highway's quirks, drifters with hollow eyes, headlights that flickered without cause. But nothing chilled him like the night he picked up the prom girl, a ghostly figure whose smile masked a sorrow that clung to I-65's asphalt like a curse, her presence a wound that bled into his life, reshaping his world with its quiet, relentless grief. It was a muggy night, the air thick with the scent of pine and hot tar, the humidity clinging to Carl's skin like a second shirt. His radio crooned, "You're a cheatin' heart low." His windows cracked to let in the breeze, the dashboard littered with empty coffee cups and a photo of his grandkids taped to the visor. He was north of Montgomery, nearing a rest area notorious for its flickering sodium lights, lukewarm coffee, and rumors of strange figures in the woods. With his headlights caught a glimmer on the shoulder, a young woman in a white dress, shimmering like a mirage in the humid haze. She looked about 17, her blonde hair pinned up in a delicate twist, a corsage wilting on her wrist, its petals drooping like tears frozen in time. Carl slowed, his rig's engine rumbling, assuming she was stranded, perhaps a prom date abandoned by a reckless boyfriend. He pulled onto the shoulder, the gravel crunching under his tires, and leaned out his window, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth. "You need a ride, miss?" he called, his voice rough but kind, honed by years of offering help to stranded travelers. She nodded, her eyes wide but distant, like she was staring through him into some other world, and climbed into the cab, her dress rustling like dry leaves, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet cab. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft, almost a whisper, carrying a faint Alabama drawl that reminded Carl of his daughter, now grown and living immobile. "I need to get home." Carl asked where she was headed, but she only pointed north, her hands folded in her lap, her corsage shedding petals onto the floor, their scent stale, like flowers left too long in a vase. He noticed her skin was pale, almost translucent, her fingers cold when they brushed the seat, and the cab chilled, his breath fogging despite the summer heat, the dashboard thermometer dropping 15 degrees. "What's your name, kid?" he asked, his voice steady but his gut twisting, the unease creeping up his spine like a spider. "Jenny," she said, her smile fleeting, her eyes fixed on the road, unblinking. "I was at the prom." Carl nodded, forcing a smile, his mind racing. He'd heard trucker tales, ghostly passengers who vanished at dawn, figures that appeared only to those driving alone. But he pushed them aside, chalking her strangeness to shock or grief. Maybe she'd had a fight, he thought, or worse, something he didn't want to imagine. Jenny spoke little, her words cryptic, like shards of a broken mirror. "Tommy promised to take me home," she murmured, her voice cracking. "But the road took him instead. The lights went out and we fell." Carl's hands tightened on the wheel, the radio now hissing static, Hank's voice warping into a low, distorted drone. The air grew heavier, the cab's lights dimming, and Carl smelled something new, wet earth, like a freshly dug grave, mingling with the stale flowers. Near Coleman, Jenny pointed to a dirt road branching off I-65, its sign rusted and illegible, swallowed by kudzu and pines. "There," she said, her voice urgent, her eyes flickering with something like fear or recognition. Carl hesitated, the road narrow and overgrown, its darkness absolute. But he turned, his rig's tires sinking into the soft earth, the pines closing in like sentinels. The path twisted through the woods, branches scraping the cab, the headlights catching glints of eyes dear. He told himself, though they were too high, too still. The road ended in a clearing where a rusted car frame sat, its chassis twisted like a broken spine, its windows shattered, vines curling through its empty seats like veins. "Stop here," Jenny said, her voice flat, and before Carl could respond, she was gone, the passenger seat empty, the corsage crumbling to dust on the floor, its scent now overpowering, like decay. The cab warmed, the radio resuming Hank's croon, but Carl's hand shook, his heart pounding like a jackhammer. He stumbled out, his flashlight beam sweeping the wreck, its metal cold to the touch, the air thick with the stench of rot. A faded prom photo lay in the grass, curled and brittle, showing a girl in a white dress, Jenny, her smile bright, her eyes alive, next to a boy in a tux, his arm around her. Carl drove to the next truck stop, a neon-lit dive called the Pine Grove, his nerves frayed, his cigarettes burning down to stubs. Over coffee, he shared his story with a group of drivers, their faces a mix of skepticism and dread. An older man, Roy, a retired trucker with a limp, pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1967. Jenny Harper, 17, killed in a crash on I-65 after prom. Her date, Tommy Reed, drunk and speeding, veering into a ditch. The car matched the wreck Carl had seen, its details too precise. White Ford Falcon, crumpled hood, shattered windshield. Roy said Jenny had been seen ever since, hitching rides, guiding drivers to the wreck, her spirit bound to the highway's sorrow, unable to leave the place where her life ended. Another driver, Lisa, spoke of a night in '79 when she'd seen Jenny, her dress glowing under her headlights, vanishing when she stopped. Lisa found a hairpin in her cab the next day, its pearl clip engraved with JH, though she swore she'd locked the doors. Carl retired in 1986, settling with his wife, Betty, in Birmingham, but Jenny's face haunted him, her smile flickering in his dreams like a bad film reel. The scent of wilted flowers followed, clinging to his clothes, his rig, even his home, where Betty complained of a damp smell in the closets. On humid nights, Carl would see a white dress in his rearview mirror, a smile that wasn't quite human, or wake to the rustle of leaves outside, though their yard was paved. In 1988, he visited a psychic in Mobile, Miss Clara, a woman with silver braids and eyes that saw too much. Clara sensed a spirit tied to Carl, drawn by his kindness, but warned, she's not alone. The road holds others, and they're watching. Clara burned sage, chanting, but the air grew heavy, and a photo of Carl's grandkids fell from a wall, its glass cracking. In 1990, a trucker found a corsage near the Coleman exit, its petals pristine despite the rain. Its ribbon embroidered with J.H. Carl donated his rig's logbooks to a trucking museum, where staff reported pages turning on their own, the scent of flowers lingering. I-65's pines stand silent, the shadows hiding a girl who never made it home, her smile a quiet plea that echoes along the asphalt, a call no driver can outrun. Story 4. The Lights of I-80. Interstate 80 through Nevada in October 2001 was a desolate expanse, its alkali flats and sagebrush plains sprawling under a sky so vast it seemed to swallow thought. Its emptiness a mirror for a trucker's solitude. Eddie Kowalski, a 45-year-old driver from Reno, hauled electronics from Sacramento to Salt Lake City. His Mac rig a fortress of air conditioning, Springsteen cassettes, and a faded photo of his estranged son taped to the dash. A former Marine with a quick temper and a quicker laugh, Eddie was used to the desert's tricks, mirages that mocked the eye, dust devils that danced like ghosts, coyotes darting into headlights. But the night he saw the lights, flickering orbs that danced across I-80's horizon, changed him forever, their glow a beacon to a terror beyond human ken, its hum a pulse that burrowed into his soul, binding him to the desert's secrets. It was a clear, crisp night, the stars sharp as glass, the air cool enough for Eddie to crack his windows, the scent of sage and dust drifting in, mingling with the cab's faint smell of motor oil. He was east of Winnemucca, the highway a straight shot through the desert's heart, its mile markers ticking past like a countdown to nowhere. His CB crackled with a warning from a driver named Big Al, a burly Texan he'd met at a diner. Watch for lights, mile marker 142. Ain't no cars out there, brother. Eddie chuckled, assuming it was a prank. Truckers love to spook each other on lonely runs, tales of UFOs or jackalopes swapped over coffee. But he turned down his radio, Born to Run fading, his eyes scanning the horizon, his marine instincts kicking in, alert for anything out of place. As he neared mile marker 142, his headlights dimmed, their beams weakening as if drained by the dark, and a glow appeared ahead. 3 pale orbs, bobbing like lanterns, moving parallel to the road, their light cold and unnatural, like moonlight trapped in ice. Eddie slowed, his rig's engine stuttering, a glitch that set his jaw tight, and the orbs grew brighter, weaving closer, their movements fluid, almost deliberate, like predators circling prey. His CB went dead, his dashboard lights flickering, the needle spinning wildly, and the air buzzed, the static that crawled over his skin, raising the hairs on his arms and neck. He pulled onto the shoulder, his heart racing, and grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight, its weight a comfort in his calloused hand, a reminder of nights in the Corps when light meant safety. The orbs hovered 50 yards off the highway, pulsing in rhythm, their glow casting no shadows on the sagebrush, as if the desert itself rejected their presence. Eddie stepped out, his boots crunching on the gravel, the silence absolute, no crickets, no wind, only the hum of the orbs, low and invasive, like a dentist's drill boring into his skull. "Who's there?" he shouted, his voice flat in the emptiness, his flashlight beam sweeping the desert, its light dimming as it neared the orbs, as if swallowed. The orbs darted closer, the light searing his eyes, and Eddie saw shapes within them, vague, humanoid, their limbs too long, their faces featureless, like smudged clay, their movements jerky, like film-skipping frames. A high-pitched whine filled his head, not a sound but a pressure, his vision blurring, his knees buckling. His flashlight died, its beam snuffed out, and the orbs circled him, their hum growing louder, the air heavy with a metallic tang, like blood on a blade. "They see you." A voice crackled through his dead CB, robotic and cold, echoing in the cab despite the silence outside. Eddie stumbled back to his rig, his legs heavy, the desert tilting under his feet, the orbs pressing closer, their shapes sharpening, arms reaching, mouths opening in silent screams, their fingers brushing his jacket, cold as liquid nitrogen. He slammed the cab door, locking it, his hand shaking as he turned the key, the engine roaring to life, its sound a lifeline, The orbs hovered outside his windows, their light flooding the cab, the shapes inside pressing against the glass, their fingers leaving smears that weren't dirt, but something viscous, glowing faintly. A passing truck's horn blared, its headlights cutting through the glow, and the orbs vanished, the hum fading. Eddie's rig systems rebooting with a whine. He floored it to the Elko truck stop, 60 miles east, his palms slick, his breath ragged, the photo of his son trembling on the dash. Inside the diner, the fluorescent lights buzzed, the smell of grease and coffee grounding him, but his hands still shook as he shared his story with a Navajo driver, Joe, a quiet man with a silver turquoise ring and eyes that held old stories. Joe nodded gravely, his voice low. "Those are the lights," he said. "Old ones, not human. They hunt the desert, take those who linger too long." Joe spoke of dying legends, beings tied to the land, stirred by the highways that scarred their domain. Their orbs a lure for the curious or the lost. He mentioned a great-uncle, a sheepherder, who'd seen them in the 60s, his flock vanishing, his hair turning white overnight. Eddie found reports of missing truckers near mile marker 142, their rigs abandoned, electronics fried, their logs ending mid-sentence with phrases like "lights everywhere" or "they're watching." A 1995 article mentioned a hiker who'd seen orbs in the same stretch, his camera melting in his hands, his photos showing only static. Eddie kept driving, but the desert stars seemed to watch him, their light too sharp, too knowing. His rig felt different, its engine sluggish, its mirrors fogging with no heat, the cab colder than it should be. He started noticing oddities, his logbook pages marked with smudges that looked like fingerprints, his coffee mug tipped over when he hadn't touched it, his son's photo curling at the edges as if burned. At home, his ex-wife, Karen, called, saying their son, Mikey, 16, had drawn orbs in his sketchbook, claiming he'd dreamed of them after Eddie's trip, the details chilling, 3 lights, faceless shapes, a hum that woke him screaming. Eddie burned the sketches, his hands trembling, and visited a dying medicine man, Hasty and Nez, who performed a protection ceremony, scattering corn pollen and chanting. But the air grew heavy, and a coyote howled nearby, its cry too human. Hastian warned, "They've marked you. Stay off that road." In 2003, a trucker found a scorched patch of sagebrush near mile marker 142, its center littered with fused glass, like lightning had struck sand, the air reeking of ozone. Eddie's dreams were filled with orbs and faceless shapes, the whine a constant echo, his son's photo now smudged with something like ash. He quit I-80 runs, sticking to coastal routes, but the desert's pull lingered, a tug in his chest. In 2005, he drove past mile marker 142 in daylight, his rig's radio cutting to static, a single orb flickering in the distance, vanishing when he blinked. Eddie kept across in his cab after that, his marine toughness fraying, the desert's emptiness alive with eyes he couldn't see. I-80's planes stretch under the sky, their silence a lie, and when the lights dance, they're hunting, their glow a call to a place no driver returns from. Story 5. The Barking Man of I-40. Interstate 40 through Arizona in August 1996 was a sun-scorched artery, its red rock mesas casting jagged shadows over the asphalt, the heat rippling like a fever dream, its horizons endless yet oppressive. Sam Carter, a 33-year-old trucker from Flagstaff, hauled lumber from Phoenix to Oklahoma City, his Volvo rig a haven of air conditioning, classic rock cassettes, and a faded marine tattoo on his forearm. A wiry man with a dry sense of humor and a restless spirit, Sam loved the road's freedom, its open skies a balm for a heart bruised by a failed marriage and a brother lost to the Gulf War. But the night he met the Barking Man, a figure that crawled from the desert shadows, its voice a twisted mockery of humanity, left him questioning what lurked beyond his headlights, its barks a sound that burrowed into his nightmares, binding him to I-40's cursed miles with a terror that never faded. It was a scorching night, the desert cooling to a bearable swelter, the air thick with the scent of dust and creosote, Sam's radio blasting Led Zeppelin's Ramble On. his windows cracked to let in the dry breeze. He was east of Holbrook, nearing a rest area with a broken vending machine and a reputation for drifters and bad vibes, when his CB crackled with a strange sound, low, guttural, like a dog's growl but human, sharp enough to cut through the music, raising the hairs on his neck. He turned down the volume, his brow furrowing, and heard it again, louder, followed by a voice, hoarse and desperate. "Help out here." Sam's first thought was a stranded motorist, maybe injured or dehydrated, but the growl sent a chill down his spine, his tattoo itching under his sleeve, a sensation he hadn't felt since his days in the Corps, patrolling deserts where danger hid in the dunes. He scanned the shoulder, his headlights catching a figure crouched by a mile marker, its silhouette lean and hunched, its movements jerky, like a puppet with cut strings, its head snapping up like a coyote scenting blood. Sam slowed, his rig's engine rumbling, his gut screaming to keep moving, but his conscience, honed by years of helping stranded drivers, from flat tires to heart attacks, won out. He pulled onto the shoulder, the gravel crunching under his tires, and grabbed a tire iron from under his seat, its weight of comfort in his palm, a reminder of nights when steel meant survival. Stepping out, the desert's heat hit him like a wall, the air heavy with the scent of baked earth and something sharper, like rotting meat. "Hey, you okay?" he called, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach, his boots crunching on the gravel as he approached. The figure stood, its silhouette sharpening in the headlights, and barked, a sharp, animalistic sound that echoed off the mesas, raising Sam's hackles, his pulse spiking. It lunged, crawling on all fours, its face catching the light, eyes wild and bloodshot, mouth foaming, clothes torn like they'd been clawed off, its skin sallow and streaked with dirt, its teeth bared in a snarl that wasn't human. Sam swung the tire iron, missing, the air hissing as it passed, and ran for his cab, his boots slipping on the gravel, the man barking and scrabbling behind, his nails scraping the pavement like claws, the sound grating like metal on bone. Sam slammed the door, locking it, his breath ragged as the figure circled the rig, barking, its hands smearing dirt on the windows, its eyes locking onto his, with a hunger that flickered with something else, pain or fear, as if fighting a force within. The barks grew frenzied, a sound that burrowed into Sam's skull, and he saw marks on the man's arms, gouges, like he'd clawed himself, their edges black and weeping. A passing car's lights swept the shoulder, its horn blaring, and the figure fled, its barks fading into the desert, its silhouette swallowed by the mesas, though Sam swore he saw it pause, its head turning back, its eyes glinting red. He floored it to the Gallup truck stop in New Mexico, 80 miles east, his hands shaking, his tire irons still clutched tight, the cab's air thick with the smell of sweat and fear. Inside the diner, the neon buzzed, the smell of grease and coffee grounding him, but his nerves were shot as he shared his story with a group of drivers, their faces a mix of fear and recognition. A Navajo driver, Ben, a lean man with a silver braid, spoke of the barking man, a drifter, a skinwalker, or a man cursed by the desert, seen along I-40 since the 70s, his barks a warning or a lure, his form tied to the land's anger. Ben shared a story from his uncle, a rancher who'd seen the man in '83, his sheep torn apart, their blood staining the sand, the man's face shifting under the moonlight, now human, now beast. Other drivers chimed in, a trucker in '89 who'd stopped to help, only to find his rig's tires slashed with claw marks, a hiker in '94 who'd heard barks near a cave, finding bones that weren't all animal, their marrow sucked dry. Sam learned of a 1998 discovery near Holbrook, a pile of torn clothes, reeking of rot, with human teeth scattered in the sand, their enamel stained black, as if burned. He kept a shotgun in his rig after that, his Marine training resurfacing, his nights spent scanning the shoulders, his dreams echoing with barks, the man's face shifting into his brother's, then his own. At home, his girlfriend, Tara, noticed scratches on his arms, faint but deep, appearing overnight, though Sam swore he hadn't touched them. In 1997, he visited a Hopi elder, Koyala, who burned cedar and chanted, but the air grew heavy, and a growl sounded outside, low and human, fading into the wind. Koala warned, "It knows you now. Don't stop for it again." In 2000, a trucker found a rusted knife near Holbrook, its blade etched with Navajo symbols, its handle wrapped in sinew, buried in a circle of teeth. Sam quit I-40 runs, sticking to northern routes, but the desert's shadows seemed alive, their edges sharper, his mirrors catching glints of eyes in the dark. On hot nights, he'd hear a growl outside his window, the mesas watching with a hunger he couldn't escape. I-40's red rocks stand silent under the sun, but at night, something crawls its shoulders. Its barks a call to those who stop, a promise of a chase that never ends. Its eyes a mirror for the road's darkest truths. Story 6. The Chupacabra of I-10. Interstate 10 through Texas in July 2004 was a sun-scorched lifeline. Its desert stretches a sea of cacti, mesquite, and abandoned shacks, the heat rippling off the asphalt like a fever dream, its horizons shimmering with promises of water that never came. Rosa Martinez, a 40-year-old trucker from El Paso, hauled auto parts from San Antonio to Los Angeles, her international rig a fortress against the road's perils, its cab adorned with a cross tattooed on her wrist, a photo of her parents, and a Virgin de Guadalupe statue on the dash. A tough woman with a laugh that could cut through barroom noise and a heart forged by raising 2 kids alone, Rosa feared little, bandits, breakdowns, or border patrols. But the night she faced the Chupacabra, a creature that slunk from the desert shadows, left her praying for dawn. Its hiss a promise of blood that stained I-10's lonely miles, its claws a whisper that followed her home, reshaping her world with its relentless terror. It was a humid night, the stars dimmed by a haze, the air heavy with the scent of dust, diesel, and creosote, Rosa's radio playing mariachi low, her eyes scanning the road for jackrabbits or drunks weaving across lanes. She'd stopped earlier at a gas station in Fort Stockton, a ramshackle place with a flickering sign and a clerk, an old man with leathery skin and a missing tooth, who warned of missing livestock, goats, dogs, even a calf, their bodies found drained of blood, their throats torn open, their eyes wide with terror. "Chupacabra," he'd said, his eyes serious, his fingers tracing a cross in the air. But Rosa laughed, chalking it up to coyotes, feral dogs, or rancher paranoia, though his words lingered, a seed of unease taking root. Around 3 a.m., west of Van Horn, her headlights caught a shape darting across the highway, too fast for a coyote, its eyes glinting red like brake lights in the dark, its form low and spined, unlike any animal she'd seen in her 15 years on the road. She swerved, her tires screeching, her rig shuddering, the coffee in her thermos sloshing, and the shape vanished into the scrub, leaving only a faint hiss in the air, sharp and guttural like a warning. Her CB crackled with static, a voice cutting through, accented and low, almost mocking. "Watch the ditches, amiga." Rosa's skin prickled, her cross heavy against her chest, her fingers tightening on the wheel, her eyes darting to the mirrors, expecting headlights but seeing only darkness. The voice wasn't familiar, no driver she knew, no call sign, and the CB's light flickered, as if struggling to stay on. Miles later, her rig lurched, a rear tire blowing out with a bang that echoed like a gunshot, the steering wheel jerking in her hands. She cursed, pulling onto the shoulder, the gravel crunching, her rig tilting slightly, the desert's silence pressing close, heavier than the humidity. She stepped out with a flashlight and wrench, her boots sinking into the soft earth, the air thick with creosote and something else metallic, like blood left to dry in the sun. As she knelt by the tire, inspecting the gash, a hiss came from the scrub, low and guttural, like a snake but larger, heavier, its rhythm deliberate, like a predator sizing up prey. Rosa's flashlight beam swept the desert, catching it, a creature, 3 feet tall, hunched, its spine ridged with spines like a porcupine's, quivering in the light, its eyes glowing red, its mouth dripping with something dark and viscous, its claws glinting like obsidian. It scuttled closer, its movements fluid yet jerky, its hiss rising to a screech that clawed at her ears, vibrating in her chest like a second heartbeat. Rosa screamed, swinging the wrench, the air hissing as it missed, the creature dodging with unnatural speed, its spines rattling like bones in a windstorm. She scrambled into her cab, her boots slipping on the gravel, her flashlight dropping, its beams spinning wildly. She slammed the door, locking it, her breath ragged as the chupacabra circled the rig, its claws scraping the metal, leaving gouges that caught the moonlight, its eyes boring through the windows, unblinking, their red glow flooding the cab with a hellish light. She fumbled for her phone, but the screen was dead, the CB blasting static, a voice repeating, "Watch the ditches, amiga," now distorted, like it came from underwater. The creature leapt onto the hood, its claws screeching against the metal, its face pressing against the windshield, its mouth opening to reveal rows of needle-like teeth, its tongue flicking, black and forked. Rosa clutched her Virgin de Guadalupe statue, praying in Spanish, her voice trembling, the cross on her wrist burning against her skin. A passing truck's horn blared, its headlights flooding the shoulder, and the creature fled, its form melting into the scrub, its hiss fading into the night. Though Rosa swore she heard it linger, a low rasp in the wind. She limped her rig to the Sierra Blanca truck stop, 40 miles west, her hand shaking, her wrench still clutched tight, the cab's air thick with the smell of fear and creosote. Inside the diner, the fluorescent lights buzzed, the smell of grease and coffee grounding her. But her nerves were shot as she shared her story with a group of drivers, their faces a mix of fear and belief. A Tejano driver, Miguel, a burly man with a San Judas tattoo, spoke of the chupacabra, seen along I-10 for decades, blamed for drained livestock, its eyes a curse that followed those who saw it. He showed a blurry photo from 2002, a rancher's shot of a spined creature near Van Horn, its mouth bloodied, its eyes glowing even in the grainy image. Other drivers shared tales, a trucker in '99 who'd lost a dog to the creature, its body found dry as a husk, its eyes gone. A hiker in 2006 who'd found a carcass, hairless and eyeless, its blood gone, the sand around it marked with claw prints. Rosa learned of a 2003 incident, a rancher near Fort Stockton who'd shot at the creature, his bullets passing through it, his barn burning down that night, the ashes littered with spines. At home, her son, Luis, 17, started drawing creatures with red eyes, claiming nightmares after her trip, the sketches too detailed, spines, claws, a hiss he swore he heard. Rosa burned them, her hands trembling, and called her aunt, Tia Carmen, a bruja who'd taught her about protections. Carmen performed Olympia, sweeping Rosa with herbs, but the candles flickered, and a claw mark appeared on the floor, shallow but real. In 2007, Rancher found a rusted collar near Van Horn, its tag engraved with the name, Lobo, a dog lost to the creature in '04, its metal twisted as if bitten. Rosa kept driving, her cross now blessed by a priest, her rig's mirrors fogged with no heat, the Virgin statue heavier, as if carrying a warning. Her dreams echoed with hisses, the creature's eyes glowing in her mirrors, its claws scraping her door. On humid nights, she'd hear a screech outside her window, the Texas sands watching with a hunger she couldn't escape. In 2008, she stopped at the Fort Stockton gas station, the old clerk gone, replaced by a young woman who whispered of a creature seen in the ditches, its spines glinting under the moon. Rosa left an offering, a candle for the Virgin, at a roadside shrine, but the flame died, and a hiss sounded in the dark, low and close. I-10's ditches hide secrets, and when the haze thickens, the chupacabra hunts, its spines a whisper of terror for those who stop, its eyes a curse that never lifts. Story 7. The Whispering Fog of I-95. Interstate 95 through Maine in January 2004 was a frozen vein of asphalt, its pine forests and rocky shoulders shrouded in a silence broken only by the howl of winter winds, the kind of road where the dark seemed to breathe, watching from the trees. Leroy Jackson, a 47-year-old trucker from Augusta, hauled lumber from Bangor to Boston, his Western Star rig a fortress of warmth against the sub-zero cold, its cab cluttered with empty coffee thermoses, a dog-eared Bible, and a photo of his late wife, Clara, taped to the dash. A broad-shouldered man with a gravelly voice and a faith tempered by loss. Leroy had faced ice storms, engine failures, and road rage, but nothing prepared him for the night. He drove into the whispering fog, a spectral mist that rose from I-95's ditches, its voice as a chorus of the lost, binding him to a stretch of highway where the living were merely guests, their names already known to the dark. The night was brutally cold, the temperature hovering at -15, the stars obscured by a low, heavy sky spitting snow that dusted the road like ash. Leroy was south of Waterville, his rig's heater blasting, his radio tuned to a gospel station, the hymns of faint comfort against the isolation. The CB crackled with sporadic chatter, drivers griping about the cold, warning of slick patches, but Leroy stayed quiet, his eyes scanning the road, his gloved hand steady on the wheel, Clara's photo catching the dashboard's glow. He just passed a mile marker, its numbers half buried in snow, when the fog appeared, sudden and thick, rolling across the highway like a tidal wave, its edges glowing faintly green, as if lit from within. His headlights dimmed, their beam swallowed by the mist, and the gospel station cut to static, a low hum pulsing beneath it, like breathing. Leroy slowed, his rig crawling at 20 miles an hour, the fog so dense he could barely see the hood, the road vanishing into a wall of white. His CB went silent, the static replaced by whispers, faint, overlapping voices, some pleading, others laughing, their words indistinct but heavy with intent. "Keep going," he muttered, gripping the wheel, his breath fogging despite the heater, the cab growing colder, the Bible on the passenger seat trembling as if nudged. Ahead, shapes flickered in the fog, shadows of people, their outlines vague, some standing, others crawling, their movements jerky, like puppets on frayed strings. Leroy's heart thudded, his pulse loud in his ears, but he pressed on, his faith a shield, though the whispers grew louder, now forming words. "Stay, join us." Leroy's name, clear and deliberate, sent a jolt through him, his foot easing off the gas. The rig's engine stuttered, its growl faltering, and the dashboard lights flickered, the gauges spinning wildly. A figure stepped into the road, its form sharpening, a woman in a tattered coat, her hair matted with ice, her eyes black pits, her mouth moving as if speaking, though the whispers came from everywhere. "You left her," the voice hissed, and Leroy's mind flashed to Clara, dead 3 years from cancer, her last words a plea for him to stay home. He swerved, the rig's tires slipping, and the woman vanished, but the fog thickened, the shapes multiplying. Men in flannel, children clutching toys, an old man with a cane, all staring, their faces pale, their mouths moving in sync with the whispers. "You can't leave," they said, and Leroy felt a tug, not physical but deep, like a hook in his soul, pulling him toward the ditch. He slammed the brakes, the rig skidding, and grabbed the Bible, clutching it to his chest, praying aloud, his voice cracking. The whispers laughed, a sound like breaking glass, and the cab's windows fogged, handprints appearing on the glass, small and large, their fingers smearing frost. A voice, clearer now, spoke from the passenger seat. "You belong here, Leroy." He turned, his breath catching. Clara sat there, her face gaunt, her eyes black, her smile wrong, her hand reaching for his. He screamed, dropping the Bible, and floored the accelerator, the rig lurching forward, the fog parting as if reluctant, the whispers fading to a low moan. The shapes dissolved, Clara's form gone, but her photo on the dash was cracked, its glass spiderwebbed, her smile obscured. Leroy didn't stop until he reached the Newport truck stop, 60 miles south, its neon sign a lifeline in the snow, its lot packed with rigs huddled against the storm. Inside the diner, the warmth of coffee and fried eggs couldn't thaw the chill in his bones. He shared a story with a group of drivers, their faces a mix of skepticism and fear. An older trucker, Amos, a wiry man with a fisherman's cap, nodded grimly. "That's the whispering fog," he said. "Seen it in '88. Same stretch. Lost a buddy to it. His rig found empty. His logbook filled with names, none his. Amos spoke of Maine lore. A fog tied to a 1920s bus crash near Waterville. 25 souls lost. Their bodies never found. Their spirits haunting I-95's northern reaches, drawn to those with grief or guilt. Another driver, Sarah, showed a photo from 2002. A rig's windshield etched with frost, forming words, "Stay with us." Leroy learned the stretch was cursed, truckers vanishing, their rigs found with frozen engines, their cabs cold as crypts. Locals whispered of a preacher in the 40s who'd tried to bless the road, only to disappear. His Bible found in a ditch, its pages torn, stained with ice. Leroy's rig felt heavier after that night, its mirrors fogging with no heat, the Bible's pages sticking together, Clara's photo colder to the touch. At home, his daughter, Ellen, 22, started sleepwalking, muttering names she didn't know, her sketches filled with faces Leroy recognized from the fog. He burned them, his hands trembling, and called a pastor, Reverend Holt, who prayed over the house. But the air grew heavy, and a window cracked, frost forming on the glass despite the heat. In 2006, a hiker found a child's shoe near Waterville, its leather pristine, dated to the 1920s, buried in snow that didn't melt. Leroy quit I-95 runs, sticking to southern routes, but the fog's pull lingered, a tug in his chest. On cold nights, he'd hear whispers outside his window, Clara's voice among them, the pines watching with eyes he couldn't see. I-95's forests stand silent, their shadows hiding a fog that knows your name. Its whispers a call to a road you can't leave. Story 8. The Black Dog of I-90. Interstate 90 through Montana in September 2002 was a windswept corridor, its prairies and badlands stretching under a sky bruised with storm clouds. The kind of road where the horizon promised freedom but delivered solitude. Diane Weaver, a 41-year-old trucker from Billings, hauled cattle from Bozeman to Rapid City. Her Kenworth rig a haven of country music, cherry air fresheners, and a locket with her mother's photo, a keepsake from a woman who'd raised her alone. A no-nonsense driver with a quick wit and a scar on her cheek from a bar fight. Diane had faced breakdowns, blizzards, and creeps at truck stops, but nothing shook her like the night she saw the Black Dog, a massive, spectral beast that loped along I-90's shoulders, its eyes a fire that burned through the dark, its growl a harbinger of doom that marked her as its own, binding her to a highway where death ran on four legs. The night was cool and restless, the air heavy with the scent of rain and sage, the prairies alive with the rustle of grass under a gathering storm. Diane was east of Livingston, her rig's headlights cutting through the dusk, her radio playing Willie Nelson low, the locket glinting on her neck. The CB buzzed with chatter, drivers warning of a storm front, others joking about diner food. But Diane stayed quiet, her hazel eyes scanning the road, her hands steady on the wheel, her cattle lowing faintly in the trailer. She just passed a rusted billboard, its faded ad for a ghost town peeling in the wind, when her headlights caught a shape on the shoulder. A dog massive, its fur black as oil, its eyes glowing red like coals in a furnace. It loped alongside her rig, matching her 60-mile-an-hour pace, its strides effortless, its head turning to meet her gaze, its teeth bared in a silent snarl. Diane's breath caught, her foot easing off the gas, but the dog kept pace, its eyes unblinking, its presence unnatural, the air growing heavy, the cab's temperature dropping despite the heater. Her CB cut to static, a growl pulsing beneath it, low and guttural, like gravel in a grinder, and the cattle grew frantic, their hooves stomping, their bellows sharp with fear. The dog veered closer, its claw sparking on the asphalt, and Diane saw its size, larger than any wolf, its shoulders as high as her rig's hood, its fur rippling like smoke, its eyes boring into her, not with hunger but with intent, as if it knew her. "Just a coyote," she muttered, her voice shaking, but her scar throbbed, a warning she'd learned to trust. She floored the accelerator, the rig surging, but the dog didn't falter. its growl now audible, vibrating in her chest, the locket burning cold against her skin. The storm broke, rain lashing the windshield, the wiper struggling, and the dog leapt into the road, its form filling her headlights, its eyes ablaze that blinded her. Diane swerved, the rig fishtailing, the trailer swaying, the cattle screaming as the tires skidded on the wet asphalt. The dog vanished, but its growl lingered, echoing in the rain, and the CB crackled with a voice, deep and hollow. "You can't outrun me, Diane." Her name, clear and deliberate, sent a jolt through her hands trembling on the wheel. The rig's lights flickered, the dashboard gauges spinning, and shapes appeared in the rain. Other dogs, smaller but identical, their eyes red, loping along the shoulders, their growls a chorus that drowned out the storm. The locket snapped open, her mother's photo falling to the floor, its edges singed, though no fire burned. Diane prayed, her voice a whisper, clutching the wheel as the dogs circled, their forms flickering in the lightning, their growls weaving into words. "Come with us, you're marked." She saw a mile marker, 237, and remembered a trucker's tale at a diner, a warning about the black dog, a death omen seen on I-90, tied to a 1908 train wreck that killed 40 ranchers, their bodies torn as if by beasts. She floored it, the rig shaking, and the dogs faded, their eyes lingering in her mirrors, the growl a low hum in her ears. She didn't stop until the Crow Agency truck stop, 90 miles east, its neon a beacon in the storm, its lot packed with rigs sheltering from the rain. Inside the diner, the smell of grease and coffee grounded her, but her hands shook as she shared her story with a group of drivers, their faces pale, their eyes avoiding hers. A Crow driver, Thomas, a stoic man with a braided ponytail, nodded gravely. "That's the black dog," he said. "Our people call it a shadow spirit, a guide to the dead. It marks those close to death, or those who've cheated it." Thomas spoke of a cousin, a trucker, who'd seen the dog in '95, crashing his rig a week later, his body found torn, though no animal tracks marked the snow. Another driver, Pete, showed a sketch from 2000, a dog with red eyes, drawn by a trucker who'd vanished near mile marker 237, his rig found with claw marks on the cab. Diane learned the stretch was cursed, truckers crashing, the logs mentioning red eyes or growling shadows, locals avoiding the road at dusk. Her rig felt different after that night, its engine sluggish, its mirrors fogged, the locket heavier, its clasp broken. At home, her nephew, Cody, 15, started carving dogs in wood, their eyes painted red, claiming he'd dreamed them after her trip. Diane burned the carvings, her hands trembling, and visited a Crow elder, Mary Walk Slow, who performed a smudging, but the sage flared, and a growl sounded outside, low and close. In 2004, a rancher found a cow near mile marker 237, its throat torn, its blood gone, the grass around it scorched in a perfect circle. Diane quit I-90 runs, sticking to southern routes, but the prairie's pull lingered, a tug in her chest. Her dreams echoed with growls, the dog's eyes glowing in her mirrors, its claws scraping her door. On stormy nights, she'd hear a snarl outside her window, the Badlands watching with eyes she couldn't see. In 2006, she stopped at the Crow Agency diner, leaving an offering of tobacco at a roadside shrine, but the wind carried a growl, and a single red eye glinted in the dark. I-90's prairie stretch under the sky, their silence a lie, and when the black dog runs, it's hunting, its eyes a fire that marks the living for a road that ends in shadows.